Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Spain the Need. I am Anthony Spano. Tonight, we got a good guy, a guy that's been around quite a bit, doing his job and making some friends at the same time. From the Chris Gunther Show, the Chris Gunther. How you doing, sir?
Doing good, man. I appreciate you guys for taking this time out with me. I hate to be the one to address it, but it's Gunther, man, not Gun 3.
Oh, and you know what? And I should know that, and I should know that because of Keith from Ursuline, and 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 I and I know Keith pretty well as a basketball official.
Mm-hmm.
So Gunther, there you go. And you know what? It's funny because it's one of those things like I've sometimes misspelled my last name.
I know how that stuff can, sometimes be interpreted. Like, people misspell your last name and then, they go on and say it. And you're like, well, no, that's not my last name. And you got to try to fix it.
And I'm literally looking right at it. I mean, that's the funny part. I'm literally looking right at it.
Hey, it's all right, man. Hey, we've had a long week. It's been a long couple months, but hey, you just live and learn and keep pushing, man. Live, learn, and keep pushing.
And maybe I'll call Keith that. So we'll maybe I'll get Keith on that one and do that to him when he's yelling at me. I'll yell right back at him, and he'll be like, "Wait, what'd you say?" Just to get him out of his element.
knowing Keith the way I do, he'll probably laugh that off. So yeah, that'd be kind of funny.
Oh yeah, he'll yell at me, and I'll sit there and smile at him. He goes, "What are you smiling at?" I said, "Well, what am I doing? I don't care." That's Keith. That's Keith for you. Well, so yeah, this is how we go live, and then we roll off something. It don't matter. We're having fun at the same time.
I love it, man. It's great to have fun. The way that things have been set up the last year with the pandemic, fun was taken out of a lot of people's vocabulary. So to do something fun and just get your mind off the craziness is truly something that we all need.
I totally agree. Let's talk a little bit about you, Chris, and talk about kind of where you started. Let's start out with that, kind of where you started at Young Radio and kind of where you are now, and it kind of how all that kind of accumulated and helped you progress to where you are now.
I started on Rookery Radio back in 2013 on the KG and CG show. And it was myself and my co-host at the time, Catherine Thompson. And we started out doing a show that would consist of hip hop, R&B, and gospel, along with talking about some of the topics that, the campus wanted to hear, along with interviewing local rappers and people throughout the city and sometimes the campus. And the show, it did well, but the show only lasted a year. So once that show ended, I went on to do the Chris Gunther Show, and that was in 2014. So from 2014 to 17, I did the Chris Gunther Show, and it consisted of me interviewing some of the top names in gospel, from Kirk Franklin to Fred Hammond to Mary Mary. So I was on that side. And I was also covering the men and women's basketball team for Youngstown State through the radio station. Had a lot of fun doing that. Once that ended, I was able to continue on with my show. The show concluded on Rookery in 2017. And then I got invited to come cover the Stellar Awards in 2018. From that point on, I got home from the Stellars and I said, there's no way I can let this momentum go. So I just said I wanted to try and get into either a TV station or radio station or something media related, because that was what my degree was in. But everybody kept telling me no. And when I say everybody, I mean everybody. At that point, I said, I'm not going to just wait for anybody to give me something. So I'm going to jump out here and I'm just going to take the show I did in college and just run with it and see what can happen. With the power of social media, it took off quicker than I anticipated. By my third episode, I was already at like 1,000 views and people were watching and commenting. And that's when it hit me. I had something special.
Well, and let's talk about the Stellar Awards. That's a pretty big award ceremony for, I think it's gospel. Is that correct?
It is. It is the Gospel Grammys.
How did that feel to cover that?
It felt amazing because as a kid, I used to watch it. I remember watching Kirk Franklin and then Fred Hammond and Mary Mary and Dietrich Haddon. And the fact that I interviewed these people when I was just a college student was pretty cool. But to get invited to come cover it was one thing. And I remember myself and, Kenny Reyes, huge shout out to him because he took me under his wing when I was in college at Rookery and showed me the ropes. And, he didn't necessarily tell me I could not do it. You know, Kenny was and still is somebody that you can always go to for a lot of advice, and somebody that can kind of keep you encouraged along the way. And Kenny was the one that showed me, and I just wanted to take it to another level. And just being there, you know, around all of those other media outlets, it had me in awe, but it also had me motivated. And what I mean by that is we were at the bottom of the list. Like, the placement that they had us set up at, not a lot of main people were coming down. So we had to physically go up to the people. We had to go walk and talk. And I just remember using all that as fuel. And I said, if I ever get invited to come cover something like this again, I will not be at the bottom.
Well, and let me ask this, and maybe many people don't realize this, but what made you get into this business? Because it's a very unique business, either interviewing or being on any type of news or even having your own show and radio. What made you get into all this?
When I was a kid, I used to love to watch Stephen A. Smith, Chris Broussard, and Stuart Scott on ESPN. You know, three of the best broadcasters. And I remember, you know, watching Stuart A. I mean, not I remember watching Stuart Scott, you know, talk about cool as the other side of the pillow. And then I remember watching Ahmad Rashad with Inside the NBA. And then, you know, watching Stephen A. Smith say blasphemous, and then watching Chris Broussard talk about all of his sources in the NBA. And I just remember as a kid, I wanted to do that. And I knew it ever since then. And ironically, here I am now, years later, doing it. And it just kind of, you know, made me think this could be something special. And I just remember watching it as a kid because I said, if they can do it, then I can do it. So they really inspired me from a distance. Now, I've never had the chance to meet, you know, Stuart Scott, you know, God rest his soul. Never had a chance to meet Ahmad Rashad and Stephen A. But I have had the chance to meet and get mentored by Chris Broussard, which is still mind-boggling to me now.
Well, and let's talk a little bit about that. And because I used to watch Ahmad Rashad on ESPN back in the day doing highlights and all those guys. And that's what we watched when we were younger. And ESPN was the thing back 20 years ago.
It
And
still is. That's the crazy part.
well, and I don't watch it as much as I do because I can watch, you know, you watch highlights on any social media platform or anything like that. So I don't literally watch like we used to, like religiously. We used to watch 7 o'clock on a weeknight. You would watch, or 11 o'clock at night till 1 o'clock in the morning.
Sure
And then
did.
your parents would yell at you. You could go to bed, and you're watching all the highlights from the day.
Yeah, man. I've spent several naps in class because of that too.
So, how did you get started with rookie radio? I think a lot of people, it's like you talk about who you kind of followed in the industry. So, how did you kind of have that land in your lap with rookie radio? Because I know it was a radio station that was started back in the day, and kind of how does it land in your lap?
When I was a freshman in college, you know, my major was telecommunications, and what we did was we had went to the station this one day just to go take a tour because the first few weeks what they would do is actually the first 2 weeks actually what they would do is they would let you come in and just take a tour of everything. In our class this particular day, we took a tour to the campus radio station, which was Rookery Radio. And I remember going in there thinking this is pretty cool. And in the middle of class, we go there, and the radio station I was going on at the time had asked us, would anybody like to jump on the mic and say something? So I just was like, all right, cool. So, you know, as 18-year-olds, you get on there and, you know, shout out to your friends, your mom, people like that. But Kenny was actually, he wasn't there in the class, but he was the one over the advisory. And a friend of mine who became my co-host at the time, Catherine, we looked at each other and we were kind of thinking about, well, like, why don't we come up with a show or try to get in here some kind of way? And we went straight to Kenny after class, and Kenny said, if you guys can come up with an outline, you can start, you know, working on your show and you could be on the air within a month. So we did it. And I, even back then at 18, man, it's hard to believe I was 18 at that time. But even back then at 18, I just remembered this is what I wanted to do. And I just wanted to do it the right way. So we had pictures, we had people like doing the promos on social media at that time. Mind you, Instagram wasn't as popular as it is now back then, but it was still, you know, getting some kind of traction. It was still getting decent numbers. And then we came out the gate skyrocketing. I mean, people were calling into the show every week, and our topics was fun. And the way we did it was, I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with this, but some of your viewers might remember 106 in Park on BET with AJ and Free and Terrence and Roxy. We wanted to kind of take that feel and bring it onto the college level. So every week, she and I are throwing jokes at each other. She's talking about my height. I'm talking about her hair. But it was so much fun because it was a lot of love in that room, and we had a lot of success even in the first year.
Yeah, and I've done radio co-hosts with people that I've been in studio with, and it's fun. If you can have fun in the studio, you'll never work a day in your life.
So true. And we had a ton of fun. I'll share this story with you. It's funny looking back over it because we were becoming really popular on campus at that time, and we were really starting to hit home. And I remember there was a contest going on because we used to always have these little jokes. And Kat was notorious at getting me, but I was the one that could always outdo her. And there was a contest going on where what happened was if we had a certain amount of calls that would call in, I would reveal who my crush was. And my crush at that time was a local singer. She was very beautiful, very good voice. And I called it out. I'm a man of my word. So once we got the certain amount of callers, I said who my crush was. Well, Kat knew who my crush was. She knew on a personal level. And I was always joking
Which you
with her.
probably didn't know.
I had no idea. I had no clue. So what Kat did, she let me get all my jokes out, right? And she was really quiet. And I think like 20 minutes later, my crush actually comes walking into the studio. And I'm like, dang, she got me good. She got me good. So that's just a little bit of the history of how, we used to work together.
It reminds me of I think in season 2, maybe season 3, of my show, I had AC and Kelly in the morning as a group, and we just for an hour and a half live, we just went telling the stories about what AC had fun with Kelly, what Kelly's pet peeves with AC was. Like, and then when no one said anything, AC would say something, and then Kelly goes, "Oh, you're gonna go there now? I'll go there too." So it was, but they worked really well together. They told us about backstories how AC couldn't get up in the morning, so Kelly had to start the show, and just a good camaraderie. And I think that sounds just like what you and your co-host had at that time.
It was a lot of fun, man. It definitely ended prematurely. I wish it wouldn't have ended the way that it did. But looking back over it, man, that first year was a lot of fun. Like we came out the gates racing, we came out the gates flying, constantly throwing jokes back and forth to each other. And oh man, so much fun. So much fun.
Usually the jokes hurt or help at the same time.
Yeah, and thankfully there weren't a lot of hurtful jokes. A lot of helpful ones though. A ton of helpful ones.
Well, usually the hurtful jokes are like the ones that are the funny ones. You're like, "Oh, you got me."
Well, let's just say when my crush at the time walked into the studio, I looked at her. I was like, "Dang, she got me this round," and I couldn't combat her. I couldn't beat her. I couldn't, try and one up her. She got me. She got me good.
Usually it's like, "Okay, I'll get you one time when you're least expecting it." They're going to get bigger and better.
Too, man.
Yeah. Well, and let's talk about your show. You've been doing it for at least 5 years, 5 or 6 years, maybe. Wait, I'm doing the math. My math's a little off. I think between 5 and 7 years, if that sounds about right.
Man, time flies, because it started on Rookery in 2014, and then
That's about 5, 7 years.
And then it ended on Rookery in 2017 because I was graduating. And then once I graduated, I just took the show I did in college. So technically, the Chris Gunther Show, as I'm doing now, was established in 2014, but it really kind of took off actually in 2019.
So you've been doing it quite a long time now in our area. That's long term.
Man, it goes by so fast too, man, because when I first started, and this is after college, post-college career, I started out with a janky tripod and a phone. And I had no kind of lights. I didn't have mics. I wasn't, I was still wearing my suits, but I still didn't have necessarily the other equipment I needed. And I just remembered even back then, I said, I'm just going to keep going. I'm just keep learning. I'm going to keep trying to get better and watching the videos and researching and seeing what I can do to improve the quality of the content. And I remember I was over my I was over my bro's house one night. We were playing 2K like we always would. And I was scheduled to interview. Well, there was a potential interview with an NBA player. It was actually Terry Rozier, who's from Youngstown. And there was a camp he was doing. I was gonna go up there and possibly talk to him, but I was broke at the time. I didn't have any money. I wasn't working. I was trying, but nothing was happening for me. So my bro literally goes into his wallet, pulls out $100, and was like, "Look here, man. If you're gonna do this, you're gonna do this right." Gives me 100 to go get a mic and everything right then and there. Now, even though that might not mean a lot to some people, to myself, that meant a lot to me because I didn't have anything. So to have friends that are willing to invest in you right then and there goes to show you the value of a true friend.
Well, and I think that's what you call, you said, true friends that are willing to support you in whatever decisions you make, good or bad, or advice in whatever that looks like.
And that same friend, I've tried to pay him back a million times, and he said no. I'm like, the heck?
Just buy him a nice birthday gift. That's how you pay him back.
Yeah, that's what they tell me.
Well, and let's talk about your show really kicked off in a little bit earlier, middle to the beginning of 19.
It did.
And then we get into January of 2020, where everything kind of starts to come to a halt. And then March, everything hits a halt with the pandemic. Has the pandemic been able to help you get and really work with people, or has it hurt you? Because you look at a lot of local businesses. A lot of businesses are either thriving or losing a lot of interest and a lot of money right now because people are at home now. And with now the natural Zoom calls and interviews like this, has it helped with getting those potential interviews and guests?
It's helped me significantly because people are at home, just like you said. When you're at home, you got nothing else to do. So let's go ahead and just talk to each other, try to get to establish some content. But what most people don't know is I was a content creator before the pandemic. I was a content creator before everybody had to stay in the house and things had to get put to a halt because I did this before the pandemic started. In 2018 is when the Chris Gunther Show from, me as a freelancer really started. And by my third episode, I already had 1,000 views and things continued to grow and grow. And then, like I said, my mic started to work, my light started to work. And then in 2019, that is when I started to interview celebrities in person. And it was really great. In 2020, I had things lined up that I think realistically was going to really take me at that time to another level because I had people lined up. Let me see. I started in January and my schedule was filled up until I believe it was April. And every month I had somebody and then the coronavirus happened. But even with that happening, I was still able to do a lot on my own because the way I saw it back then and even now is when things happen, you have to learn how to adjust. You got to adjust quickly in this business because nobody cares what happens in terms of we don't care that this person just got sick or we don't care that this person just lost somebody close in their family. In this business, everything is so fast paced and you got to learn how to adjust and adapt. And that's what I did. I learned how to adapt to my surroundings in terms of the coronavirus. I learned how to wear a mask and wash my hands. And it's sad that we're in 2021. We still have to tell people to wash their hands, but that's not the point. And here I was thinking, what can I do to get better, even in the midst of when everything is getting shut down? So I started reaching out more to the celebrities and reaching out to the people that I could connect with. And if I can just be quite honest with you, I did not expect to get the response I got as soon. And don't get me wrong, I was turned down way more than I was accepted. But man, the names I got during that whole time frame, even till this day, is truly a blessing.
Well, it's the notion. It's like in the nonprofit or anything like that. What's the worst they're going to say? No. You just then you go on to the next person.
Right. And I have definitely been accustomed. And I know this is going to sound kind of harsh, but it's the God's honest truth. I've gotten used to being told no so much to the point where sometimes I'm shocked when they tell me yes. It may sound silly, but it's the truth.
No, I don't. I think that's a great point because I mean, it just depends who you're interviewing or who you're asking, the time frame. There's more factors in it than just saying, "Hey, let's go." And I mean, that's what people don't realize.
Oh, they don't realize the struggle behind the scenes, man. They don't realize that most of the time the artist or the big time guest, whoever, they have a team working for them. It's not just them. So you got to go through the managers and PRs and assistants and public affairs, et cetera, et cetera. And you got to go through all that just to get one person. And most of the time, at least from the things that has happened to me, when I got rejected from somebody, the artist didn't know anything about it. Their team automatically said no. But once word got back out to this particular individual, they had to step in and clarify it. You know, I'll share something else on here. There was this one comedian who I interviewed. I first interviewed them in 2019 at the Cleveland Improv, and they were so nice and so welcoming and so friendly, and they appreciated me for coming up there to talk to them. And I just said thank you because that meant a lot to me. Keep this in mind. We're in the day and age of social media, so anything can happen. This particular individual, they skyrocketed off of social media to the point where they were offered a casting position on Wild and Out and became one of the most popular faces on that, comedy show. Fast forward, here I am interviewing them as I'm watching them on Wild and Out. I'm like, man, that is amazing. Well, fast forward, I tried to get in touch with them again for an entire year, but this particular individual's management team would not call me back at all. They didn't call me back. They didn't text me back. They didn't email me back. And I'm just like, okay, this is getting ridiculous. So I found out that they were coming up to the Improv last year, and her opening act, who I became, pretty tight with, he's a very good guy, a hilarious individual in his own right. I reached out to him to see if I can come up. And he was like, yeah, bro, just come on up. We can set something up for him. I'm like, all right, cool. So once I shared with the artist that I was coming to talk to, comedian I was coming to talk to, and they were like, I wish you would have told me that, they said, I wish you would have told me that you were coming up. And I had to tell them, well, I tried, but your management wouldn't hit me back. The look on their face was priceless because they were like, wait, what? So they called up their management in front of me and they were trying to get an answer. And without going into too much detail, let's just say that it was a lack of communication. But even with that lack of communication, I still got the interview and I gained the person's respect a ton more because I came in there suit and tie, hair was cut, mics was looking, sounding a lot better, my lights were looking better. And they complimented me on that because they say, yo, bro, last time I seen you didn't have a suit on, but now I see that you really on your stuff. And that right there proved to me that I really did have something special.
Well, and it seems like you do. You look at kind of go after it, going after your dream, and that seems to be a great thing that you've been doing from stage one back in college, where you're a freshman walking into this studio looking like, oh, this looks cool, and creating your own show, and then working from there.
I did. And it's just hard to believe that that was 7 to 8 years ago, but it still happened. I say this because it's the truth. I say this because it's not something that can be debated. When I was at Rookery, I was one of the most popular, if not the most popular DJ during my time there. And I was doing things that wasn't even quote unquote popular. My first year, I did hip hop, R&B, and gospel with the co-host. The show ends, I take a gospel show, and I just do gospel all 4 years, and I'm still number one, along with having celebrity interviews, along with covering the men and women's basketball team. And I wish I could have did that a little bit more, but a bunch of stuff happened behind the scenes that was just out of my control. But even with that being said, I still stayed focused, and I was still able to have a great run during my time there. Once I left, I knew I still had work to do. And truth be told, I still feel that same way now, even years later, having a significant amount of interviews I've done on my own, which a lot of people, they're going to hear this and, they're probably going to say, wow, but it's the truth. I don't have a team. I don't have a PR. I don't have an assistant. I don't have a manager. I don't have a stylist. Everything that you see has literally been from my own hands.
And I agree with that. And I'm doing this because of my master's program at YSU, because of Dr. Adam Earnhardt in the communications department. This is my master's program as part of it. We don't have anyone either. There's no, I mean, I may ask some friends that have the expertise in a certain area, but you're looking at the only person like you that, I mean, I don't think people realize how much time goes into every interview. You have to do research on these people.
Sure do.
You have to, like, here's something for you. From my sources, well, from what I looked up and what I've researched, you have over 3,000 interviews and broadcasts. Is that true?
Well, I'm gonna get there. I have over 300. I got over 300.
Okay.
But I do.
Maybe I missed the zero.
That's all right. You know, it
3,000's a better number.
It really is. I wish I would not have clarified it, but I'm not a liar. You know, tell the truth and shame the devil. But I have over 300 that I've done. But this is one of the things I do have. I have over 100,000 collective views, and that is not an easy thing to get, because
no, that is not.
What I was doing, a lot of times, what I'll do when I have the time, if I ever have down moments, I'm always looking back at old things I've done. So I went back in 2019. It's crazy how everything is coming back to me now. In 2019, I was curious how close I was to my 100th episode, and I was really getting close to it. So what I did was I was trying to hit my 100th episode or interview before my 24th birthday. And when I tell you I reached it, it felt like, man, a big weight has been lifted off of my shoulder. So I took about a few days off. I think I might have took about maybe 4 to 5 days off. And I went to Orlando with my fiance and her family. And when I got back home, I got right back to work. I was ready to keep going. And then recently, I was trying to figure out how close was I to 300, because it seemed as if I can get 100 of these done a year, then I'm doing pretty good. And once recently, I reached my 300th one. I was like, wow, that is incredible to be able to reach 300, along with, and most people don't know this, but I was actually doing 2 more shows on top of the Chris Gunther Show that were all my own. I did a show called Chris Gunther's The City that was inspired by the shop that was featuring like LeBron James and Draymond Green. I was watching that because I was really curious to hear what those big people in pop culture had to say about anything that was going on. And I said, I want to do that here. So what I was doing was I was reaching out to those big name people in the city who had something to say. You know, we could share their Youngstown journey and their Youngstown stories, but we can also have a raw but real conversation. Now, obviously not too raw, because you're still on my platform. I don't want, somebody to say, well, he got too many dirty guests, or I'm not watching him anymore. But I still had a phenomenal run doing that. Then I was also doing a sports show on top of that. And sometimes what I was doing was I was doing production for 3 shows in one day. So imagine getting up early in the morning, you're filming an episode for the Chris Gunther Show, and then you're doing Chris Gunther's The City, and then at night you're doing the sports show, and you're doing all those, and sometimes production was in one day. And I used to get home a little bit tired, because that's just the human side. But man, when I tell you, I woke up and was like, I'm going to get after it today. After production was done, I got home and said, wow, I really just did that. And I'm going to do it again next week until I finally feel comfortable enough where I can just kind of sit back and be like, okay, I'll take a little bit of a break. And, even though those 2 shows, well, one of the shows, the sports show, unfortunately had to come to an end due to a bunch of things that till this day make me shake my head. And the Chris Gunther's The City had to get put on pause due to the coronavirus. But one of my shows that has really been the reason why I'm talking to you today is still the Chris Gunther Show.
Well, and I think in the overall notion of just what you've done as well, you've succeeded a lot in 5 to 7 years from your first experience when you were a freshman to where you are now.
Thank you.
And I think in that, and you just don't do the Chris Gunther Show. You also do, I like to call it the Chris Gunther Show and sports, because
That's
you're doing
true.
you're doing a lot of filming with high school basketball. You're doing some play-by-play. So talk a little bit about how you got into that, because I know I've seen it, and from now on, I haven't reffed a game as I'm a basketball official, but I'm able to watch nowadays right on social media. So talk about how you kind of got into that.
So glad you brought that up too, man. I wanted to get into it when I was in college, and I had a little bit of success doing it with the radio station. But because I was doing gospel radio, they were trying to box me into just doing gospel, and I didn't like that. They weren't allowing me to do what I wanted to. Like I wanted to be doing, some sideline reporting for the men's basketball team and for the women's basketball team along with the football team. But they weren't really letting me do it due to a bunch of foolishness that was going on behind the scenes. So once I graduated from college, and there was this one particular job I had at the time which didn't work out, and I was sitting at home and I saw the high school basketball season was going on. Now, the story behind that is I was interviewing some of the coaches before the season. I was talking to Coach Tanisha Franklin, who is the head coach for the East girls basketball team, Coach Kevin Kyler for the East boys basketball team, Coach Marlon McGahee for Cheney boys, and Coach Birch from Boardman. And what I did was I wanted to do like high school basketball season previews the way that I remember the season previews for the NBA used to go. And what I also wanted to do was just do it in my own spin and do it my way. So what I was able to do was I went to go cover the, teams, because after the interviews, the coaches were like, hey, we can have you come to a game if you would like. I was like, all right, perfect. My first game covering it was the East girls. And I got there at the halfway point of the season due to my work schedule. But once that work schedule was no longer, I had more free time to come and cover them. And what most people don't know is, of course, me and Coach Franklin, we laugh at it now. We did that as a test run. I did it as a test run because I wanted to see what the response would be. So from one game with the girls led into one game with the boys. And I was going back and forth between East, Cheney, and Boardman. And one of the things I learned very quickly was if you're going to do this, you better make sure that you're consistent with it, because people don't want you to just come around every once in a while, and even though they're still high school teenagers and, they're becoming young adults, they can tell if you're genuine or not. And they can tell if you really care about them, or if you're there, just to come get a quick story for about 2 or 3 minutes, go on your TV station and whatnot, and then you don't talk to them again. But the beauty of what I do is I'm able to really stay connected to them. And I was able to develop some good bonds with some of the players. I was able to watch their growth. And this year, due to, COVID, fans weren't allowed, and they were really pushing for me to come back, which I'm glad that they, did. And now here I am, year 2, and I've still been with Boardman. I was with Cheney. I wasn't able to be with the East girls due to, my schedule at that time, but I'm still very close with, their coach. I've developed a very good type of relationship with, some of the other coaches in this area. And it's truly a blessing, because I remember how it was when I was their age. And I just remember, sometimes wanting to have somebody to come check out our games on a consistent level. But to be in this position that I'm in, to be able to actually interact with the players, do some play-by-play, and I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but I'm pretty good at what I do. I'm grateful for it. And now to be in this kind of position where people are watching me and people are able to, want to connect with me, that right there is the true blessing, because I'm doing this out of the kindness of my heart. I'm doing it because this is what I really love to do. This is what I'm passionate about doing. And you could tell even in the broadcast, I'm just a passionate individual about doing what I do. And they see it too, which is why I get a chance to really be around them. Because like I said earlier, they can tell if you really care about them or not. And anybody can come to just one game, but being there pretty much all season is what really got me to say I'm glad I made the right decision.
Well, and it's funny because as refereeing games, I've refereed the East Cheney game, the boys game, and Ursula, and I've seen you there. And aren't you afraid that one of the players is going to come running so fast that they're going to like knock you out?
Oh, not at all, because they know I'm not the one to try. They already know it. No way possible.
So if they do, they're going to be punished for it in some shape or form.
Put it like this, and it's funny you mentioned that. So true story. There was a game recently, and the ball was like literally rolling out of bounds, and I was there with my tripod and my camera and my mic and everything. As the ball is rolling, I'm not even moving. I'm just standing there because I'm like, there's no way this ball is coming over here. I think I might have been about 2 seconds away from getting knocked over. And before that happened, the kid was like, Chris, sorry, Chris, sorry, Chris, sorry, Chris, sorry. And I just kind of started chuckling because I'm like, man, you guys weren't going to hit me. But if you did, it's not like I'm going to knock you out or anything, you know?
There's another story too and it's funny because all the kids on the bench were probably like,
Oh, man.
before.
They were like, Chris, no, Chris, no. I'm like, guys, he's all right. It's perfectly fine, you know? And then even if I did get hit, it's not like I'm going to go sue the parents. Like, it's part of
You'll find a better position.
exactly. Exactly. And it's funny you mentioned that thing with positions because with this coronavirus, a lot of fans haven't been able to be in attendance. So with me coming to the games, I'm able to shoot pretty much from anywhere. So I'm able to try things out this year that I wasn't able to do last year. You know, my angles look a lot better. My commentating is a lot better. My content is actually a lot better too.
Well, it reminds me. You talk about the story of the ball rolling, like, oh, don't worry, guys, you weren't going to hit me. I had a game. I think it was a preseason game, exhibition as they called it, a couple of years ago. Valley Christian, Youngstown, Ohio,
Mm-hmm.
and Struthers boys game at Struthers Fieldhouse, and the head coach for Valley Christian is Dolph Carroll, and he loves his coffee.
Yes, he does.
Everywhere he goes, he has his coffee. So he's coaching. His coffee is laid on the scores table right near him. So the ball gets tipped, knocks his coffee over. His players and his parents behind are like, they're not worried about and he just looks at his player and he goes, "Why didn't you grab that?" It was the funniest. We could not. I think everyone started laughing because if you know Valley Christian, you know golf. He always has a coffee, no matter if it's
He
5
does.
o'clock in the morning or 8 o'clock at night. And it was just
He
one of those
does.
things that it just he knocked it over, and the whole crowd was all he hears and he just looked at it, and his players were like, one kid just put his head down and walked towards the bench because
Every
he
time
knew.
I've seen him, he's had it in his hand. Every time I've seen him.
Oh, it's a classic, and it's funny because it just as a basketball referee, you just laugh, and then golf's like, Tony, what are you laughing? I go, where's your coffee? But
I know how that feels, man. Every time I've been around him, he's had coffee and the slick back hair.
yeah, looking like who did he look like the other day? Who has their hair slick? Pat Riley.
Yes, he does. He's the Youngstown Pat Riley.
Yeah, and and what people don't realize about him is he played in college and I think he played in the NBA.
He did. I want to say this was like in the mid 80s, I think.
76ers maybe. I don't remember.
Because I know I think he played at Kansas.
Yeah, and then he came to Youngstown State under Robich at the time, the head men's coach back in
He
the
was the
day,
coach at
and
that
then
time, right?
yeah, and he was the assistant. And so when he went somewhere else, Dolph just stayed here with his family and never left. And then he's the athletic director and head coach over at Valley Christian. Great guy with his
Very
coffee.
nice.
What a great story.
Every time I've encountered him, he's been very nice. Every time.
And he's 6'8".
Which is something that you don't see a lot. You know, a coach that's
No.
6'8", that's a nice guy. You don't see that a lot in this area.
Yeah, you don't. And over the year, you've been building up a lot of your interviews, a lot of that, and you were actually kind of honored, kind of in the last couple months by Youngstown State for a
Yeah.
lecture series, I think it was. How did that feel?
It felt so surreal. It was a full circle moment. And it didn't hit me that it was really happening until I sat down in that chair with my former professor, who I'm still very fond of, have nothing but love for, and Miss Jackson. And it just really made me say, wow, like this really did happen. You know, this happened from a guy who decided to bet on himself when nobody else gave him a fair chance. And when I was at that lecture series, I was just thinking, if COVID doesn't happen, maybe I don't sit in this chair. maybe the show doesn't take off the way that it did. And as I was just, kind of reflecting, and of course my competitive nature was starting to kick in, because I was really wondering, okay, who was before me? And how many views did they get? How many likes did they get? And believe it or not, I started really thinking, okay, if I say this and if I do this, then the numbers might go up a little bit. If I elaborate a lot on this, the numbers might go down. So I was really contemplating what I was thinking. But as time went on, as the interview was going on, I was thinking to myself, you know what, all that stuff doesn't even matter, because it's an honor to be here. It's an honor to, be at a place where historically, our people, African Americans, we weren't given the right to go to school. We were denied the rights to so many things, and you couldn't go to college. If you did, it had to be like at a night class, and they weren't even trying to let you have a shot at a fair education. But here, this young black kid from the south side of Youngstown, Ohio, is coming back to share his story about how much the university impacted me, but also I'll say this, how much I impacted the university during my time there.
Well, and I think it shows that sometimes, like this interview, it's you think of what you like. What are they going to ask? What are they going to say? And you get real nervous. But like at least this show, it's more sit have a great conversation. And you probably were thinking like you said, what do I say? Like, is it the right thing to say? And then you kind of sit back and you're like, I'm just going to have a great conversation.
That's how I felt. And with Miss Jackson, I interviewed her a few times. I interviewed her on the Chris Gunther Show and on Chris Gunther's The City. So to kind of like reverse the roles and to have somebody ask me questions, it still is kind of weird, because I've done over 300 of these things and I really love what I do. Like, I live for it. I embrace it. But it is kind of cool to kind of take a step back and let somebody ask you a question for a change. But it's nothing like being the host and the moderator and being able to just present questions to people and have them answer. You guys just have a good conversation. It's nothing like it, man. It's one of the most fulfilling jobs in the world. It really is.
Well, and the tables are turned here because usually you're the host.
Exactly. And it's one of those things that truly makes me feel. And it's funny because I was sharing this with my fiance. I was telling her I feel wholeheartedly that I'm not a person who is worthy enough to be interviewed. I feel like I still have a lot of work to do. I feel like I still have ways to go and milestones to hit and bridges to climb, because I'm never truly satisfied with anything. Growing up, I used to watch Michael Jackson, Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan, all the greats at whatever it is that they did. And one of the things they all had in common was they never settled. They never settled for anything. And greatness is not something that you can do on an average mindset and do it in a way that makes you comfortable. There have been several times I did not want to do my show, especially when I kept being told no, or I wasn't given a fair chance at, a local radio station or TV station or whatever the case was, because I was trying my best to get in, but everybody kept telling me no. And then once I got in, it wasn't what I anticipated, because they tried to form me into something that I'm not. And they weren't trying to showcase my skills. They were, in a sense, I feel like they were trying to showcase things that I could not do, and they just blew those things up. And I remember, I'm going to become so good at what I do. Once I left, I said, I'm going to become so good at what I do, the next time they see me, they can't ignore me. And now here I am talking to Anthony Spino. So I guess I did something right.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Well, we talk about, we're in the spring of 2020, and they're talking
Finally,
about,
too,
or
man.
I'm sorry, May of 2021. Oh my, I feel like I haven't left the house. I feel like I haven't left the house. It's just one of those days. We talk about the pandemic, and hopefully we see an opening in the light at the end of the tunnel, because I think people are very eager to get out this summer. What kind of plans do you have moving forward that you're looking forward to or looking at with your show, or just you in general?
The biggest thing I'm looking forward to this summer is marrying my fiance. That is the biggest thing I'm looking forward to, man. As much as I love the Chris Gunther Show, I love me some Chanel.
I'm wondering, is she in the same room as you right now?
Nah, she's not. She's doing her thing, I'm doing mine. But she's going to see this and be like, oh. And I'm going to be like, yes.
Get those extra brownie points.
You know what I'm saying, man? Yeah, man. You got to, man. Yeah.
Chris, what's your favorite dinner? What's your favorite
Favorite?
food?
I'm a burger and fries kind of guy, man. I love it. I love it. Like,
He's looking for a burger and fries after you watch this.
yeah, that's right. Give me my burger, man. Give me the burger.
So, when do you expect to get married? Do you have a date?
We do have a date. I won't say it publicly, but let's just say it's going to be a summer month, and it's going to be a month to remember.
Oh, I like that. A month of celebration, not just a week. It's a month.
It's going to be a month to remember, and I cannot wait.
Well, that's good to hear. And anything down the road with the Chris Gunther Show
Absolutely. So I'm in talks right now with a couple of people for some more big interviews. I'm excited to see what happens with those. And I'm also going to just keep tugging away. I'm going to keep building. I'm going to keep working because I never want to settle. I don't want to be the person who you look at and say, man, he was really on his way, but what happened? Or, man, he was really on the rise and then he fell off. So you can't get too high, you can't get too low, but you got to stay consistent and you got to keep working. And that is exactly what you guys can expect on the Chris Gunther Show.
Well, let me ask you this, and I'll ask these two questions, and we'll kind of go from there. Is who kind of was your best interview over the years? Who have you interviewed that was probably it could be the shocking one that you had your crush on in high school or in college, I should say, or someone in the last couple years? Who who was that best interview that you just enjoyed?
I really enjoy interviewing Jennifer Freeman, who I had a very big crush on. She played Claire on My Wife and Kids, and I had such a phenomenal time interviewing her, and she was so nice and very friendly, and I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed interviewing Sinbad, who is one of the greatest comedians of all time.
He's a hoot.
Man, one of the greatest comics and very down to earth. And I really enjoyed talking to Tommy Davidson from In Living Color, and who was also Oscar. He was also Oscar Proud on the Proud Family. And if anybody knows me, knows I'm a big Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and Martin fan. And Tommy Davidson was actually on Martin, and when he played the Varnell Hill character, and in the middle of our interview, he broke into the Varnell Hill, like he becomes a Varnell Hill, and I'm like, man, there's no way that I cannot become Martin, right? So what we did was we kind of reenacted the scene when he was Varnell and I was Martin, and right then and there, I was like, man, I really have something special. So those three were some of the ones I really enjoyed.
Yeah, Tommy's a funny guy. And so is Sinbad. I actually worked with Sinbad at one time.
Sweet.
Huh?
I said that is sweet.
Yeah, I was working for the Funny Farm Comedy Club, and we booked him, and he was in town for 2 or 3 days. So we worked with him with going to media and just had dinner with him, and that guy is he's one of those comedians that just everything he talks about, it's just hilarious.
It is. He makes you feel like you actually know him.
Yeah, and he'll make fun of you, but at the same time make fun of himself.
He will. Like when we did the interview, he asked me where was I filming at, and I said from my basement. He said, man, that must be an Ohio thing, because y'all generation is different. Y'all had basements. You know what I had growing up? We had lower levels. And I'm like, dang, that's funny. True, but funny.
And he doesn't use any swear words, any bad language or anything. When we brought him to Powers, he went on for, oh my gosh, 2 hours.
I mean, there.
You went to the one? Yeah, that's when he was there. That's when I worked with him, when we brought him into Powers or downtown Youngstown, whatever, Dior Performing Arts Center. But yeah, he was funny.
That was my mother's birthday, and that was my mom's favorite comic. So actually, what he did in our interview, he gave my mom a birthday shout out, which I thought was the coolest thing.
Yeah, that's a good time. Anyone you want to interview that you've been, that like kind of give me a top list of like a handful of people across the board of who you would love to interview.
Will Smith, Stephen A. Smith, Martin Lawrence are my top three.
Okay.
Those are my top three.
Too bad.
Without question.
Hopefully you can get Will Smith and Martin Lawrence at the same time, and they can act some bad boy stuff.
Man, and I've seen every Bad Boys. Like, my favorite scene from Bad Boys is the opening scene where Martin and Will are arguing because of a French fry, and Will goes, "It's not because of French fry, it's because of your lack of respect from other people's property." And as the guy comes up, Martin is like, "Hold the on," and then ended up kicking him in the It was like, "Wesley Snipes, passenger 57. Now give me a motherfucking handy wipe." Mind you,
Yeah.
I'm a Bad Boys fanatic. Okay, so I know this stuff. Or of course, the scene where they're in the grocery store and the girl tries to walk out and the guy comes in with the gun, and it was like, "Put your hands up." And it was like, I'm a cop.
You want a badge? You want a badge? I'll give
you
a badge.
I sell you badge, 50 cents. And the girl walks out and like, "Freeze, my lovers," and Will and Barbara pull out guns like, "You freeze." And it goes back up.
Those were classic.
Down, give me a pack of chocolate fruit bubblicious. And then Martin waits for like 5 seconds and goes, "And some Skittles." That is classic, man. So yeah, Will and Martin are definitely on my list. And let me go back to the last question you asked me. Another great interview I had, especially because this is from like the 90s era. Man, it was when I interviewed Jason David Frank, who was the Green Power Ranger. And then when I interviewed Kid from Kid and Play, those were so amazing.
Yeah, those would seem to be some fun interviews.
They were, man. It was so cool. And then, of course, from the 90s, Jason Weaver, who played young Michael Jackson, and he was the singing voice of Simba from The Lion King. And I interact with him now on social media till this day. So just being able to build these kind of relationships and talk to these people, knowing I interviewed them, man, it is a tremendous blessing.
Yeah, and that seems that you're on your way, and I wish you the very best, and I thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join me.
Man, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Not a problem. Now, at the end of each, and I wish you the best of luck with your fiance, and I actually I got married about a year and a half ago, thank God, before the pandemic. So I wish you the very best.
We appreciate that, man. Thank you so much.
So at the end of each show, I like to kind of go around and ask some of my guests some questions, and these will probably be tougher questions than the ones I asked you during the interview. So let's just leave it at that.
Gotcha.
You ready?
Let's go ahead.
The way this works is the answer can be personal or professional. There's no right or wrong answer.
Okay.
Unless you think in your head that it's going to be a right or wrong answer. What's your best accomplishment?
My best accomplishment in terms of what, my career, my professional life?
Could be professional or it could be personal or professional.
My biggest accomplishment, professional wise, has been getting my show off the ground. I'll never forget when I was a kid, my 8th grade teacher told me that I was going to drop out of high school and have to work at McDonald's. And then throughout high school, I was constantly called stupid from several, coaches and players, et cetera, et cetera. But here I am with a college degree, no felony, no children, not on drugs, not strung out or anything like that. So that is one of the biggest accomplishments that I have. As far as my personal life, my outside of my relationship with God is definitely, there. But outside of that, greatest accomplishment without question is getting ready to marry Chanel, without question.
I think that's 2 burgers.
With cheese on it.
Yep. Best memory.
Best memory from the Chris Gunther Show. My best memory, one of them actually.
Well, like I said, this could be anything, personal or professional, so it doesn't really matter.
I'm going to go personal and professional. Here we go. So professional best memory is when I was invited to cover the Cincinnati Music Fest in 2019, and I hung out with DJ Kid Capri for an entire weekend. That was amazing because from there I interviewed Ronnie, Bobby, Ricky, and Mike, who the world knows as New Edition. That was so cool. Then I got a chance to do an interview with Teddy Riley, who's one of the greatest music producers of all time. I got a chance to meet Major, who sings the song "This Is Why I Love You," which is probably going to be played at my wedding. And that was a lot of fun. Graduating from college was big, and then personal life, one of my favorite memories. Honestly, man, I don't know, because I'm still working on that now. I'm still working on
Okay, there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing.
it.
What's your best experience?
My best experience doing my show has been the work ethic, has been putting in the work and seeing the results from it. Yeah, it's great to get the interviews, and it is incredible to get people to watch your show. But that's not the reward. The reward is putting in the work and knowing nobody can take that away from you, and to seeing it come to life, and seeing it come to really full fruition. That's the greatest accomplishment right there, is to see that it can happen. And I'm still super young, so that keeps me grounded. Most people don't notice I'm only 25. I'll be 26 soon, but most people don't notice I'm still very young. But to be able to have the success I've had this early, it makes me grateful, but also continues to keep me hungry.
Well, you also got a great ride ahead of you. So,
And I appreciate it. Thank you, man.
role model. Who would be your role model?
My role model, without any type of guidance from him, I wouldn't be who I am. That's my dad. My dad, my main man, loved my dad. My grandfather, God rest his soul, he was somebody I was very close with. He unfortunately passed away a couple years ago. But man, the amount of time he spent with me was it was just so impactful. And then my pastor now, Bishop C. Sean Tyson, who I affectionately call Batman, he's had a tremendous impact on me. And yeah, I love that guy, man. So those three, without, hesitation, my dad, my grandfather, and my pastor. Those are three of the greatest role models a young man could ever have.
Okay. If you would choose one person, past or present, you would want to meet, who would it be and why?
Michael Jackson. I was the biggest Michael Jackson fan growing up. I loved Mike. I loved his music. I loved his work ethic. I would have loved to really met him to see his work ethic, to see what he did leading up to making an album like Thriller, or preparing for a tour. The kind of work he would put in to see if there's something that I can take that he does and incorporate it into what I do. And somebody else, I'm a basketball fan, the late great Kobe Bryant. I wish I could have met Kobe, and I almost did meet Kobe. Almost met him, but it didn't happen.
Yeah. What a great basketball player, no matter if you like him or you don't like him.
That's how I want to be, somebody who, I don't care if you like me or don't like me, but when you hear me dag nabbit, you're going to respect me.
Nothing wrong with that. Chris, I appreciate you taking time. It's always a pleasure.
Man, thank you for having me, man. It's been a lot of fun. Definitely keep pushing, keep going, man. This is a great platform you have. Thank you for having me. God bless, my brother.
Thank you, and we welcome you anytime in the future to see your progress and see you're working hard.
Appreciate that. Thank you, man.
Not a problem. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. We hope you will continue following us. Go to anthonyvspano.com for any more podcasts, announcements, or news. Have a great night.